All right, folks. Well, welcome to another episode of the Digital Contractor Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Hess, and I'm here with a new wingman to the Digital Contractor Podcast. My good friend, my dear friend, a guy who my children are a big fan of, as they call him, Keith, Mr. Keith Callaway Jr. Welcome to the show, brother.
My honor and privilege to be here. What's happening?
So today, man, I thought we would give people in the construction industry the gift of unpacking what I know is a very important topic to both of us in our companies, the power of digital presence in the construction industry. And that is, it's a wide topic that we're going to try to bring in some focus to. But, the power of digital presence in the construction industry is something that I believe that not enough people know about. And I don't think enough companies are really taking advantage of. And so I wanted to talk about, how digital presence, social media, online presence, Google, all of those things have really transformed what, K&L looks like today versus what it looked like, several years ago. And we'll add some commentary in there from our company, from the Pavement Group as well, because it's transformed both of our companies into what they look like today. So why don't you walk us through kind of what, that looked like, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and then what it looks like today and kind of the results of that.
To be frank, 3 or 4 years ago, we were an absolute disaster. We didn't know what digital marketing was, and we didn't understand it. We thought that you could just put money into an advertising company and that they would just give you leads for it. And, I think that's a big misconception with a lot of the contractors out there is that, if I pay more, I'm going to get more leads. And it wasn't until we started really diving into, okay, what is it we're buying? What is it we're asking these people to do, that we started to see the shift. I mean, we all as consumers always search for things on Google, but if you don't have a Google My Business page and it spits that information back to you, like, hey, we're actually being relevant in our space, you're just throwing money in a dark hole and you have no idea where it goes. And that was basically where we were 3 or 4 years ago. And it wasn't just Google, it was any form of advertising. We just thought, like many of us do, that we were paying professionals and that they were going to help us. And unless you really start to unpack what it is that you're investing in, they're just going to do the bare minimum. And they're going to get, you're going to get hustled over and over and over again. And that's where we were. We were very frustrated. We were lost, confused. And honestly, we got our feelings hurt, as an ownership group. Like, why is it that we can't seem to get any traction in the digital space? And that's the snapshot of where we are. And now if you put in anything to do with paving, pavement maintenance, asphalt, seal coat, anything to do with any of our businesses in our markets, if we're not the top one, we're definitely on the first page, and we are absolutely in the paid ads everywhere. So our presence looks much bigger now because we understand what we're buying. But it took the last 4 years of trial and error to start to understand what that looks like.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, man, to just share, like, you guys were not spending a small amount of money back then, right? I mean, you were spending a significant sum of money every single month, like many contractors do, and you were getting activity. It's not that you weren't getting any results, right? But understanding those results, understanding what you're getting, and starting to dial in, like, who are we actually trying to attract is something I think a lot of contractors struggle with. So can you talk about the difference of, kind of back then it was like the shotgun approach of like, hey, we just want to talk to people. And we know that if we talk to enough people, what sifts out through our conversations is going to be, a significant amount of business that allows us to grow versus today. What I see from your company is much more of a sharpshooter approach where you know exactly what you're trying to accomplish and you know how to accomplish it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the shotgun approach is exactly it. So if you were to look at what we did 4 years ago, imagine a map and you just put your city in the middle of it. And then you just take a line and say, I want to do anything within this circle. And then you just put a bunch of money towards trying to be inside the circle. That's in essence what we were doing. I didn't understand it was possible to do things like, okay, we don't want inner city Portland downtown, right? Like you can choose zones and areas and markets that either you're really, really competitive in, or perhaps maybe you aren't, because it's actually a high density, high rise situation, which for a lot of contractors, if you're a glass cleaner, that'd be great. But if you're a paving contractor, there's no parking lots. I don't want to advertise down there where there's a whole bunch of people and there's no asphalt to do anything with. And so starting to understand the market was as important as understand the marketing. You know, we were learning what our unique qualifiers were for customers. You know, we've actually written personas out for our ideal residential customer, our ideal commercial customer, and our ideal industrial customer. And we know where they are, where in the ladder of their hierarchy they come to us. Because you never get the CEO of a company calling you and saying, hey, could I spend a few $1 million with your business and have you redo every piece of asphalt we have? You know, it usually starts with a mid-level manager that has some pain point. So understanding who we were going after, who the people are that are reaching out to you, is a very key component in understanding where your advertising dollars are going to do you the best good, right? That was really key for us. Another aspect of digital marketing that we didn't understand is that you get to choose. Like if you have a really good digital marketer, you can choose with them what it is you're searching for. You don't, like, everybody wants, you know, it doesn't matter the industry. We're both in asphalt. I always say, I would love to have this really big, this big parking lot. Like, give me a gigantic parking lot with no catch basins in it. And I just like to do that every day of the week. Well, that's not always reasonable, but you can say, I know where those parking lots are, and draw a line around them in a neighborhood and say, this is where I'd like to really go after. And you could choose those. And we didn't have any idea about that before we started really diving into digital marketing.
Yeah. So, you know, in digital marketing, man, just to give everybody some context here, because I know that everybody's definition of that is a little bit different. You know, I think that, you know, kind of where we both started out was on the social media side of understanding, you know, how we show up in the branding section of digital marketing, right? And you guys were out there, you know, doing a lot of, you know, paid ads on the residential side of things with companies like Home Advisor, which I know a lot of people can relate to. But, you know, I think the important part of digital presence, as we're talking about it, is really taking that holistic approach, right? So not just having social media, not just having a digital presence on Google, but really doing a great job of showing up and branding across the board and telling the story of your company and your culture, what you stand for, what you do, how you help people by digital delivery. And so that's a complicated process. And so for those contractors out there that are starting from scratch, which both of us have experience starting from scratch, how would you recommend somebody getting started in that? And then, you know, I'll add on to it with my experience of how we got started and how we, you know, evolved into what people see today at the Pavement Group as well.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions with starting is that it needs to be perfect. So let me give you a cheat code for social media. Your customers don't watch your social media. Your competitors do. 99% of the people that follow you are either people in your industry or people that know your business already. So social media, although important because it helps build culture and it does build your brand, it is not your primary vehicle to advertise with. It touches very few potential clients. They come to your social media after they find you or after they're already interacting with you in some other way. So it's important to do in tandem with it, but social media in general is not going to be the vehicle that you run the majority of your leads through. And that holistic approach. We have found that in the process of doing all of these things, like for instance, I think we have 9 or 10 paid ways we get people in our funnels, which is, and haven't looked at this number with a lot of other people, but we have a very vast net of those. But when we decide we want to use a different funnel, we're using it for a particular reason. Maybe it's that we don't have the time or want to do the legwork to send out 5,000 emails to this particular type of client. But we have those particular funnels for a reason. And Home Advisor is one of them that we've used for a long time. And this year, our digital marketing has knocked the socks off of lead revenue, or off of Home Advisor. We're actually slowly turning the drip valve off on that, because we're finding that because we've done the holistic approach long enough, we rank at the same as Home Advisor when anybody searches the same term. So we're slowly turning that valve off because it's really expensive, to be straight up and honest. But without all of the different pieces, we wouldn't rank up there. You need to have the time. You need to have the longevity. You have to have good reviews. You have to constantly be going in and tweaking your Google My Business page. You need to make sure that all your addresses match, like where your business is, all the things that get mailed to you. It all needs to go to the same place. Because somehow Google knows, and I'm not smart enough to understand this, but somehow Google knows all of these different pieces of information. And if they don't line up, then you're going to be considered less than ideal. Like, it doesn't mean that you're sketchy or that anything bad has happened. It just means that there's a check mark against you that says something isn't lining up with the rest of your business. So the holistic side is you still have to do paid ads until you get the organic growth. You still have to do other forms of advertising because it's not an overnight process. This has taken us 4 years and a lot of money and a lot of investment time-wise to get to the place where when you search for something in our market, and actually it's not just our market. So, I was searching something in Boise, Idaho the other day. One of my paid ads came up in Boise. I don't know why.
That's because they know you're in Portland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't paving though. It was just like, oh, hey, there's one of my ads. It's my ad, and from my computer. But we've created so many different streams that we're catching in the right spots. I was just having lunch with one of my sales guys, and he himself has touched 1,121 leads this year. That's how many were assigned to him. He's only done half of those in estimates, because most of them are people that are just calling and they want a patch for $200 or something that's unreasonable, that there's no money in. But he's been responsible for 1,121 touches with individual customers. And the fact that I know that, Brian, is astonishing. From when we met 4 years ago, when I said, I don't know how many bids we did. I have no idea. So I could tell you what each individual customer did, and I could tell you their biggest customers. And this is some of the stuff that goes into how you advertise, right? Like, you have to decide what your ideal customer is, and then tailor your marketing so that you're actually attracting that type of customer.
Yeah, and I think, man, you hit on so many great points there. But it is a fact that social media is a way for people to get to know you, not a way for people to find you. And so it's really, if I could give anybody advice on their digital presence when it comes to social media, it would be tell your story there. Share who you are. Share, a look inside of your company. What do you stand for? And do it via video. Storytelling is a huge win on social media. It's also a great place for recruiting. To your point, there's going to be a lot of competitors that are watching your social media channels. It's a great way to hire people. Throughout the industry, many people say, we can't find people. Well, I can tell you this, all of my friends don't have that problem. All the people that we hang out with that have a great social media presence, people are lined up knocking on the door from across the country that say, we'll move to work for your company because the story connects with people. When you do that right on social media and you have that branding presence, that really is attractive to people, that allows people to get to know the culture and the personality of your company. Then, to your point, man, the leads that you drive and the activity that you drive from Google, from ads, from being present in all of those different places that are out there. And I would agree with Keith, try to take advantage of all of those that would benefit you, right? That will help you be able to build a presence in your market, and then figure out which one of those is giving you the best return and keep pushing the limits on that until it breaks. That is what digital presence in the construction industry is meant to be. The holistic approach is how you win this game. And, just speaking from your company, when you look back 3 or 4 years ago to the growth that you guys have experienced over those 3 or 4 years, give people some context on what it looks like, when you just have a, singular shotgun approach versus putting in the work over a 3 or 4 year period, and what that revenue and profit growth looks like.
I don't know exactly the numbers, so don't quote me, but we're roughly from 3 or 4 years ago, we're 400% bigger. We're 4 times the size we were 3 or 4 years ago. I know this number for a fact because I got sober 6 years ago. We are 12 times the size we were 6 years ago. 12 times. So when you decide to show up for work, it helps. But then when you decide to show up and you decide also that you're going to be a player in, everybody, and this is one of the biggest misconceptions about contracting, is that any Tom, Dick, or Harry can go buy a pickup and now they're a contractor, right? They can go buy a tool bag and a pickup and they can do whatever. But a good contractor, and especially one that is really good in the digital space, they have things working for them when they're not functioning at physical work, right? And that's one of the biggest parts of the digital marketing tool that we've learned, is that we don't have to actually be at work for our presence to be known, right? This whole thing works 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether we're up and awake or we're asleep at home, spending time with our family. And that's one of the biggest things. So 4 years ago, we were, to put it lightly, we were a disorganized mess. And, and there's some fun stories that go along with that, but we have actually chosen to be a player. We've pulled up a seat to the table. We have then invested money and time and energy in understanding what it is that we want to do. And then some of it is a trial and error. Like, okay, let's try this. And if it doesn't work, and we try to commit on something that actually is, we generally try to commit to something for a year. I say, I want to give a solid year to this to see if it actually works, so I can see what it does from season to season to season. And in 2020, that was no different. Even with coronavirus, and there was a lot of things, and I know the pavement group experienced this too. There was a lot of deferred maintenance. People had some capital projects that they just pushed hold on, and some of them I don't even know if they've started again. But we were committed to the process, saying, I'm going to not just see this through, but I want to understand the return on this investment. And there's a couple of lead sources that if we had pulled the plug late in 2020, it would have been a bit premature, because this year was killer for those particular lead sources, especially the ones in that commercial/retail side where tenants and office buildings were involved. But we try to commit to something for a year. If we can't afford it in August, then we're definitely not going to afford it in January. So, you want to make wise decisions, but commit to something for a long enough time period that you know what it does from start to finish. And if you don't have the funds to do that, maybe dial it back a little bit. Just be able to commit to something and actually see it through, because digital marketing, the long game is how you win. That is the 100%. The longer you're in it and the more consistent you are, and the more consistent, it's a lot like social in this, the more consistently you post, the better the algorithm picks up whatever it is that you're putting out there, and it moves it to the top one step at a time. There's no bottom, push the button with a bunch of money and you're all the way to the top. It doesn't work like that. You have to climb the ladder.
Yeah, couldn't agree more, man. And to your point, last year, during COVID, a lot of companies did pull back, right? They just, they got nervous about what was ahead and they pulled back. And I know you guys did the same thing that we did. We said, man, we're gonna throw the throttle wide open and see what happens, and see, who we can attract. And that led to, basically doubling our business last year. And from last year to this year, it has almost tripled. So it is, a pretty incredible trajectory there. To your point, when you keep the steady hand and you stay committed to something, or you go more in when everybody else is retreating. And it's counterintuitive, man, but usually that's the trick to business success. And, for us, digital has the best way that I describe it, digital presence, that commitment to digital marketing. Every company, I think, experiences this in construction. When you sell a lot, you go out and sell a bunch of projects. Well, then you got to manage them. And so typically you have this like up and down, kind of roller coaster of a season, right? That, it's feast or famine. You have a lot of work or sometimes you're running out. And I have found that digital marketing has been the trick to lowering, reducing those valleys or eliminating those valleys from, the business, where you have a consistent, steady flow of work. The last thing I really want to talk about here, because I think, it's the perfect time of year to be talking about it, is this concept that people have that they don't need to do marketing in the off season, right? Or that, they're too busy or they're too tired to get to it. It's November 11th right now. What is your advice to people as we go into the off season this year? What is your advice for those people that don't have any digital presence, or their digital presence isn't working for them the way that they want it to?
So this actually goes back to a thing that we were at a couple weeks ago. Organized people, successful people plan well. And most of the time they plan for the following year in the current year. And when you think like a rich person who has a lot of things to manage, they have to do it well in advance. So they're planning in the winter right now. They're having all their planning meetings for 2022. And that means that they're getting prices, they're getting quotes, they're getting budgets put together. So if you're waiting till after the first of the year, or let's say the second quarter, because you're in one of those seasonal spots where you think that you shouldn't have to work as hard during the off season as you do during the production season, you're already late to the game. All those decisions for next year have already been made. We double down in the winter. We do a lot of cold calling. The leads don't flow in as heartily in the winter, which is completely fine, because it gets us time to snipe the hunt, the type of prey that we want. We go back, and I know one particular salesperson of ours says, when it gets slow and I don't have things to do, I only look at 6-figure contracts and up, and I call those people relentlessly, right? Because those are great contracts for the sales guys. Their piece of that pie is really good. But he says, I don't want to do that for a $3,000 approach or a little $5,000 little driveway. And he's right. So he invests his extra time in those big fish, those whales. And if you're waiting till after the first of the year, you already missed the mark. Like, you're not even in the conversation. Maybe after the first of the year, they'll tell you to call back next year, and then you're already late again, because in your mind, it's not working that way. So we get on the boat early. And this time of year is when we talk about, okay, what actions are you going to take to get to your goals next year? And usually for our team, it's about touches, because we can control those, outgoing phone calls, because we can control those, and then some form of follow-up. This time of year, it does get a little dicey with people traveling and all their family stuff. So you want to maintain an open line of communication without going to the point of being annoying. But you have to try. Like, if you don't pick up the phone, they're going to forget about you, and they're probably going to forget your name and who you were. You always want to be top of mind, especially this time of year. So that's my advice. If you want something, you got to take the action to go find it, because it's not coming to your door.
Yeah. And I think another important part of that, man, is that, you've got to, if you're going to generate phone calls and activity, then you have to have, the right mousetrap all the way around, from people answering the phone in your office to having the right website that allows people to be able to enter their information easy and connect with your company. Make it easy for people to do business with you, right? And if you don't have that digital presence, and you think that it's not important for you to pay attention to that until next year, by the time you get to next year, and Keith kind of said this without saying it, by the time you get to next year, man, it's too late. When you get to the spring, because a lot of people think, I'll get to that in February, I'll get to that whenever. you just heard the man say it takes, 3 or 4 years to really get this cracking. So the best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The second best time is today. And so when you think about this off season, think about what you need to do to take action to get that plan in place so that next year you're executing at a high level. You have a plan. You're working on those things, and your digital presence will absolutely multiply the results that you get. Our companies are proof of it. You heard about the growth that we've both experienced. And I would attest a massive amount of that to social media, showing up every day, getting to know people online, getting to know other people in our industry online through our digital presence, right? The power of that has multiplied our businesses. But the foundation of it is much of it starts and ends with digital. Look at how we're talking to you guys right now, right? Whatever you're watching this on is a form of digital presence. Whatever you're listening to this on, it's a form of digital presence. And the longer you wait to get started, you're just stealing from yourself, your company, and your employees and your families. And so, the reason that I wanted to do this show with Keith today is he's one of the best examples of anybody that I know of companies that have created success through digital presence. Man, I appreciate you being here, bro. I appreciate you sharing. Any final words for people that you have?
I think that this goes back to one of those things I wish I knew when I started. I've been in this business a long time, but I feel like I started a few years ago. You have to see things through. And so in the form of digital marketing, you actually have to be relevant to be found. You can't just wish it. It actually has to happen. And if you don't have that, lead revenue is a great source. Reach out. I mean, I'm willing to chat with you. Brian's always willing to chat, just to say these are the starting points. It doesn't have to be some gigantic budget, because most of us started with a really humble one. It was really small, and a lot of times, the more I reached out for help, most of it was free. Most of the time, someone said, "Hey, go watch this video. Go check this out. Talk to this guy. This is how it works." But if you don't know, ask. That's how you get somewhere. That's how you get to a level of success where people look at you and say, "How did you get there?" I stayed consistent, and I was able to be found.
Yeah.
Goes to that digital marketing.
Yeah. And I think, you kind of touched on this, but relationships are so big, man. When you don't know, reach out to somebody. To your point, man, make your own seat at the table, right? Get in contact with the right people that can guide you to that place. We're happy to be a resource for you. Reach out to Keith, reach out to myself, contact the team at Lead Revenue. We're here to be a resource. We're not here to sell you anything. The only way that you're going to be able to buy something is if it's good for you anyway. And that's your own decision, right? So it's not a sales pitch. It's an offer to be able to help you and educate you and point you in the right direction. And we say that because it's changed both of our businesses, and it's changed both of our lives. It's made things easier and better. And we want that for everybody. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Digital Contractor Podcast. If you found some value in this, which if you had your ears open, I don't know how you didn't, please share this out, share it to your pages, share it to any contractor groups that you're a part of. We're just trying to help and serve people, guys. So please help us do that. And until next time, we are signing off here. Thank you, brother, again for joining me here. And we'll see you guys again next week on another episode of the Digital Contractor Podcast. Thank you guys for being here. Love you guys.